You don't need a lifetime to build a self-sustaining business, one that operates without you, but actually thrives with you. Your freedom will come when you invest in people, lead with purpose, and streamline your operations.
You don't want to never count yourself out, make it a great one. Just be sure to leave out the doubt, time to wake up.
I'm Harrison Tash, and with me today is Jason, and we're talking about our 8 to Great framework. And more specifically, we're talking about the last of the foundational 4 values. Values. Yeah, I think it's kind of appropriate too, because values is kind of like this last kind of filtering of all your decisions, right? So as we end the foundational 4, I think it's appropriate to talk about what are values? Why do we talk about them?
So we're talking about, values that shape our decisions. It's where our decisions come from. It's what defines our decisions. They shape language. It shapes behavior. It informs our teams, our culture. It informs our customers. It really is the core that our character comes out of. That presents itself to others.
Yeah. And I think of, like, again, sometimes this can feel like, well, how does this really affect my company? Why do values matter to us? And we do have this. Well, it's because we want to create a culture of consistency. We want to create a culture that has aligned values. But again, this stuff affects really how you scale as a business. Right? Like, how many times have we ran into a business, and when you could even think of like ones that are larger, where values weren't apparent from one location to the next, from one person to the next, right?
Inconsistent in leadership, inconsistent in teams, or inconsistent in, if you're multi-location. Values are what's going to keep your product cohesive. It's what's going to keep your teams intact. It is your brand. It is your brand. So it will help you scale, because you're going to be tempted to take shortcuts. You're going to be tempted to try to find a quick way to solve problems or navigate some sort of complexity. And values is what's going to really hold your quality accountable.
And, as you were saying, I was thinking about when we have different personalities. That's why in our organization, that's why the healthy leadership gig is so important, because you have these people who are focusing on people. And so you see this humility in that, you see this vulnerability in this, but values are the same in the which that if we don't have healthy leaders and we have different personalities, their traits are going to come through in different ways, but values are the anchor to that. Okay, this person is more oriented towards, results. And so they focus a lot there. But if they're healthy leaders, they still focus on people. If they're using the values, we're still aligning around things that we believe in. Right. And so, very important.
On the other side, if there's someone that doesn't value people and they only value outcomes, people are going to feel devalued. They're going to feel used. They're going to feel leveraged in an inappropriate way. And so when opportunities for growth comes, values are what's going to help you get there the way you want to arrive. When opposition comes, when, sometimes you get these tailwinds and it's pushing you fast and momentum is with you, values help you stay who you are. Don't lose yourself in profit. Don't lose yourself in success. When headwinds are coming at you and you feel the resistance, you're going to want to, sometimes you're tempted to overreact. And if you cut your values to try to save, ultimately you might save the day, but you're going to lose. You're going to lose your business. You're going to lose your customer base. You're going to lose something that's going to be really hard for you to win back. So values matter deeply.
And so when we read what we say values do, what they're used for, values are the filter for all decisions. They shape language, behaviors, beliefs, and actions. And those are not just words that we throw out there. How do you want people to think in your organization? Share with them the values of your organization, or else they won't be aligned to it. Maybe on accident sometimes. But if we want to be purposeful about it, if you want the actions of your employees to reflect the values that you have to share those values. I think that maybe it's a good time to say, like, sometimes values become this thing that we just post on the wall.
Yeah.
And we've had this happen, right? Where you're like, yeah, those somewhat sound like us, but we've grown over the years, or we've changed over the years. And so are those really values, right? And so values, we would say, they are very, they're sustainable with the company over time. It's not something you change every year or every few years. Values should stay pretty consistent because it's the principle of these are the things that we believe in, right? These are the things that we value as an organization.
Right. Yeah, you will hear it in people when they talk about your company, when they, it's over the weekend, it's when they get off work, it's what the thoughts they're thinking before they head into work. You might come in the ways of, well, they don't value my opinion.
Yeah.
You're overhearing a conversation, or maybe you have this idea, well, they don't value my opinion. They don't value input. They don't want my input. What are you saying?
Right.
They don't value your observations and what you've learned. They're valuing something else. So, or if you feel the freedom, I have this thought, I could share this, or next time I'm talking I'll bring this up.
Yeah.
You believe they value hearing from you. So you can easily do a litmus test.
Yeah.
On what are the values just by listening to your employees talk.
Language drives culture. And if you're hearing this language that doesn't align with your values, there's a misalignment, right? So let's talk about the 3 types of values that we identify. And so if we look at these and we explain them, let's just go over the 3 first, which is there's adopted, there's natural, and then there's these ones that we're working toward. And so each of these are ways in which we say, you have to identify your values first, but how do you do that? You got to break them down in these buckets, right? So natural, let's talk about, adopted. Let's go into adopted first. So adopted values are like these hand-me-downs from our past or our current environments, right? These are the things that we just kind of naturally take with us. And I think there's probably some good examples in this of like, what is a natural value in our work environment?
Are we talking about adopted values?
Adopted. Geez, I keep saying natural, don't I? Yes. Adopted. Geez.
Well, so we're talking about adopted values, and these are things that we've seen work, whether it's in our past or we've observed it in others. Somewhere along the way, we've learned these, been taught these, have seen these in action, and we like them.
Yeah.
So we adopt them and we bring them in.
Yeah.
Honesty. I don't know who created that one. Like you can't take credit, so we adopt it on it. And so things that you've learned and seen work somewhere else, you bring them in, and they're not bad. It's a good place. You don't have to be unique in every value that you have.
Yeah, and these adopted ones sometimes can also be kind of what's trending in the workplace. You adopt it from, okay, we saw this organization and this is what they're about. They're somewhat in our industry, and it's like, we're actually seeing this and we're adopting these based upon what we see works. I think that's a little dangerous sometimes, but in all actuality, we all have adopted values that come from what we know and see, right? And sometimes those are built on, the person who started the organization or the owner. Sometimes it's based on some of the leadership team. But I think that it's more collective than that. You know what I mean? Like it's got to be values based upon what you also as a collective have adopted, and you have to pick and choose in some way.
Right. So there's adopted.
Yeah.
The second one you like to talk about, natural.
Yeah, naturally like to talk about natural, yeah.
So talk about natural.
So when we think about natural values, they just kind of flow out of our daily grind, right? They are values that you get a group of people together working in a business, and all of a sudden these values just kind of pop out, right? So adopted is, okay, we actually naturally adopt from either our past or our current environments. Adopted can be very much so that like you're almost choosing to adopt them, sometimes not. Natural is just like, this is who we are. And this one's kind of, I think that this one can be kind of hard to identify because sometimes it's the most influential people in your business that show your natural ones. And you kind of have to maybe ask, is that just based on one person?
Right.
Or is that based on what we believe? Now remember, thoughts, actions, language, all these things are to be filtered through our values, and they form our values.
Yeah, a few things come to mind when I think about natural values. One of them is nature and nurture. And sometimes, when you're bringing in staff, when you're bringing in employees, when you're bringing in new leaders, you're bringing in their nature.
Yeah.
And if you allow something to happen over time, or if you celebrate or reward that nature that's in them,
or avoid it,
it's going to become a value.
Yeah.
So nature. Other times there's this nurture, and that's where you are. You're nurturing it. You're making it visible. You're calling it out.
Yeah.
You're celebrating it. You're making it something that people can see. I remember one of the hardest, scariest. It impacted me. One of the times that I had the opportunity to sit around just an incredible leadership table of people that were, way outside my league. I was swinging a bigger bat than I should. And anyway, when they said this statement, it wrecked me. And I remember when they said this, and they said, they were talking to this small group of leaders, and they said, your culture, your values is a result of everything you do or allow.
Yeah.
Everything that's happening around you is because you're either causing it or you're allowing it. And so what are you causing and what are you allowing?
Yeah.
So when we talk about natural values, we've got to be mindful about them, because whatever we're causing or whatever we're allowing will become a value in our workplace.
Yeah, if you like imagery, it's like this wafting aroma of what naturally comes out of, employees and your office and your company. It's just kind of naturally comes out. And so a good example of this would be, worked with a company and theirs was grit. And I was like, yes, like this is when you hire people, you're filtering, them for, do they have grit? Mm-hmm. And so when you're in their office, you just kind of naturally see grit just happen because they've hired people based on that grit. They've trained people based on some grit. And so, as easy as to think about what grit is, for them, it was also wearing multiple hats, like figuring things out, being problem solvers. So there was a lot of examples like that I think kind of show the natural side. So we talked about natural or adopted, we talked about natural, and now working toward. Mm-hmm. So these are the values where you're like, we're not quite there, but I think we can get there, and we want this for our organization. Mm-hmm. An example of this is, we worked with an organization that, they wanted to be clean, they wanted to be neat, they wanted to be, organized. They wanted this, and they didn't have it at the moment. The leadership team was like, "That's not us, but we want that." So working towards, and I think we all probably have these kind of values that we want to work towards. We want this as a part of who we are.
Yeah, that's probably one of my most favorite ones of the three as it relates to team dynamics.
Yeah.
Because I think that it allows authorship and ownership.
Sure.
So when you're working towards a value that you think will help us be the better version of ourselves, it's not completely true of us now, but we want it to be. What's our future state, our preferred future state? And you can begin to put words to it. Like, this is what it's going to take to get there. Now you get to allow people to share and to help author. Well, how do we practice that? What does that look like to live that out daily? And then they begin to own it. So I think it helps with synergy. I think it helps with team building. I think it helps with motivation. And they're a part of making it. So I think adopted is good. It's a good starting spot.
Yeah.
And I think if you do adopt, or you do find out some other natural values, it's still okay to ask your team or a wider team, how do we practice this? What does that look like for us?
Yeah.
Even in your intra-departments, not just your organization, but if you can take that to each department, go, how do we practice this one? What does this look like? When would we recognize it?
Yep.
It allows what you're talking about in this third one. We're working towards the better version of that value.
Well, and let's bring this down to some practical application. Like if you don't do values and you don't share them and use them in your company as a resource, as a tool, how do you, like we said earlier, how do we grow consistently? But this story, I think, is we talk about that company that wanted to be neat, they wanted to be organized. We would walk up the stairs, they had coffee cups just lined up right? And we thought, well, practically, how do you work towards this? Practically, we just identify some areas that we need to clean up. And it was like, okay, hey, this month, no coffee cups on the stairs. This is kind of a funny story. You're like, okay, like you want to work towards this value. How are we going to do it? It's like, well, let's start practicing it and let's start seeing if our employees adopt it. And it was kind of funny, it was like over time you saw less coffee cups and you're like, okay, we're working towards this. Over time, that neat and organized kind of value they wanted started to actually become true. So working towards is literally what it means. Like if you want it, you've got to figure out ways to practice it.
Yeah, it's good.
All right, so thinking about integrating values, I want to share a story of a company that we work with where the president literally shares his values or shares the values of the company every week with the employees, but he goes one step further. He talks about how employees in different situations are actually aligning with values every single week without fail. And I think about this, like, how do we bring this down to practicality where it just doesn't end up being words on a wall right there, right? Like you're actually sharing your values, you're talking about them, and then you're reinforcing the behavior you want to see. What are some other ways that you think of when you think of, practically integrating values into the organization?
Well, one way that we can that I've seen, I guess, or we've practiced is when we're launching a new project, when we're launching a new initiative, we have our team we have values sitting right there.
Yeah.
So that when we're talking about the ways, the modes in which we might accomplish these, does it align with the value? We could go this route. We could make this decision. We could cut this. We could start this. Well, how would we do that in a way that aligns with these values and doesn't minimize or diminish them?
Yeah. Again, I just had something popped in mind when he said that. We had a company that was wanting to expand their services. One of their values was executing on commitments. And someone in the leadership team brought it up and said, I don't think we could own that value by adding more services right now. We would not be able to execute on what we said we would be able to do.
Wow.
And so that's an example of what you're just saying. Like, it's a practical application of how do you filter decisions through actual values.
Right.
Yeah.
There's been opportunities even in conflict, or I think there's healthy conflict. Conflict's not always bad.
No, yeah.
So if you're going to have, because one of the values that I love is no silent disagreements.
Yeah, that's a great value.
So it's okay. But where we are going to have conflict, let us model these values.
Yeah.
We're going to honor one another. We're going to tell truth, but we're not going to attack a person. We're going to attack the problem.
Yeah.
We're not going to diminish their point of view. We'll say things like, don't get mad, get clear.
Yeah.
Improve your argument.
Yeah.
Don't get frustrated, just improve your argument. So
I thought you were going to say, get glad. Don't get mad, get glad. But no,
we
don't
take
get...
you for a sponsor.
Yeah. So but get clear.
How do you practice these values? You can teach them and train them. And so one way to do that is in your onboarding.
Yeah. So we have this model, right? The escalator model, which is, okay, as you're filtering decisions, there's these steps that we take. And so built on values is the way that you find people. It's the way that you develop people, empower people, and multiply people.
That's good.
Based on that, you're always filtering people through your values to then find, develop, empower, and multiply. And building and replicating off this is, again, talking about the bottom line. How do you scale a business well, consistently? Right? Is doing this escalator model, if you will. So let's maybe, as we close here, talk about some very practical things. If people don't have values, or if they do, let's talk about the ones that don't. Is there a number, right? That's a question I get. It's like, well, how many can you have? Because when you ask people, hey, what's the adopted values we have here? What's the natural values we have? You could have a list of like 20, 30, right? When you ask people. So you got to filter it somehow. What do you think? What's a practical number that makes sense, or how do you make that decision?
Well, I think you got to figure out how are you going to enforce them?
Yeah.
How are you going to reinforce them? How are you going to communicate them? How are you going to celebrate them? And so you want them to be able to remember them. So unless if you don't have some kind of clever acronym that makes sense with your company, you probably ought to stick to 3 to 5.
Yeah. No, and I agree. I think that the less that you have, the more you have the chance of remembering it and being able to live it out. And we've run across times where people have 10, 15, and it's like, wow, like, I mean, you need to have a printed out piece of paper for it, and your walls aren't big enough to put these on there, right? So practically speaking, yeah, I like that. So how do you remember it? So then another practical question on that is like, is there a length? Like, is it a sentence? Is it a word? Like, how do people take their culture and kind of put it into, their own language?
I think the word should spark something emotional in them, something visual in them. It should resonate with them. And so when I see that word, it causes me to think something. It reinforces something that I want. I want for me, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think that whether you have a sentence, if you're going to do a sentence, it should be short and it should be a memorable principle, or do a word that strikes something deep within your team and person.
Well, we talk about language drives culture. Like, use the language. One of the values we have seen in a company is deadly competitive. And I was like, wow, that really speaks to your culture. Where like a lot of people on your team just really want to win. And that can go many different ways. But it was a cool value for them. It worked really well for them. Let me read some examples of values that we have. Strong and steady. Like, this is a great way to show that, during the tough times, we're going to push through, right? Neat, clean, and organized. A value of, hey, when we're done with projects, we want to clean up well. When we're working with people, we want to make sure they know we're a very clean and organized company. More than one. It speaks to the leadership piece, right? It's not just about one person. Always growing. I loved this one. I thought this was good. When we think about when you bring people in your organization, they get complacent. If you're filtering your values, you're always talking about growing mentally, growing physically, like as far as the business goes. So anyways, these are some good ones. Thoughtful communicators. I thought these are all one company's values that I think really speaks to who they are and what they're trying to form.
I know we mentioned it, I think in a different segment. What I love about their values is aligned with their purpose.
Yeah.
They're purpose driven. And you can just see this cohesion that's happening with their vision.
Yeah.
With their vision, with their purpose driven, and their values are all aligned in how they want to develop healthy leaders. So they've put a lot of thought into it. So I don't think we should just throw things up that are neat and catchy.
Yeah.
It should be aligned with really who you are, because the more they're aligned with who you are, it'll more easily be to naturally live that out amongst your teams.
Well, and that's a great segue to kind of wrap this portion up, which is, as we think about the foundational four, it's built on healthy leaders. There is a compelling vision that you have, purpose-driven, and values. And we think about these foundational four components. Again, these aren't soft and squishy. These are things that actually make a business that's thriving, one that operates without the head person, the president or the CEO, but it actually thrives more with them in it for sustainability, because they're the ones who are leading people in this. It attracts people. It detracts the people you don't want in your business. And so this becomes a part of, if you want to grow as a business, you want to create that next territory, you want to create that next service, you want to expand as a business. How are you going to do it well? Anybody can do it, but how are you going to do it well?
Yeah.
And so values fits right into that as the filtering decisions of how we make decisions in our business and what we build on.
Goals never die, souls gotta fly high. I'm taking off to the sky, and with every day that goes by, I'm making sure that it counts. It don't matter what's the amount, you only get now.